other thing, you know, this sort of righteous war canon that we don't need to do, if we made it like righteous and other rescued, like other rescued, other saved, you know, other people who saved, so we have good people as witnesses. Yes, the people who are righteous, you know what I mean? Yeah. And the Harkins would only be a part of it. They would show medals. Yes, exactly. But someone like, you know, Renata is someone like Renata. But she's very, very good. You know, what you see done in the yes, I can understand.
Is this chair being used in the...
No, but just bear in mind, not just righteous, but extended rescuers. You know, that's what you're saying.
How you doing? All right?
So she can sit down and
I don't know. It's my phone. Pass.
she must be that's a hard zero.
She got to know
Okay, I listen.
Well, actually, I think that's why you can swap with them. Because at the end there. Michelle, you gone?
Can you hear me now? I'm just going to be here while I talk.
Yeah.
Go away.
Hello everyone. Thank you. Welcome to our third Ora Torah session for 2013. I'm just going to get comfortable. Watch the microphone. So, for those of you who haven't come to Ora Torah before, I just want to let you know this is a 6-month lecture series, and it started last year. And the goal is to provide an educational and social evening for members of both Jewish congregations in Wellington. And we have speakers from both our congregations and also from university, and for the very first time from the Holocaust Centre of New Zealand. And just before we start, I'd like to remind you that we also have a book club running this year. 3 books have been selected, and the first one is The Finkler Question by Howard Jacobson. And it's going to come up in next month, I think, in a couple of weeks. I forgot the date. So please start reading the book, because the point is to come and discuss your opinions of the book if you're into those things. So without further delay, I would like to present Inga Wolf, Director of the Holocaust Centre of New Zealand, along with the National Education Director, Gail Karen. And they'll be talking to you tonight about the first delegation of teachers, New Zealand teachers, who went to Yad Vashem to learn about the Shoah, to come back and teach New Zealand secondary school students. So there'll be a short break around 7:50 for about 20 minutes-ish, and then we'll resume until 9 o'clock. So you'll have another chance to order food and drink during the break. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to welcome you here tonight, and I thank Michelle for allowing us this evening to tell you about the most exciting project that the Holocaust Centre has done in its entire history. And to thank very much the people that sponsored it, who were Yad Vashem, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Israel, which is represented here by Teddy Poppinger from the Embassy of Israel. And I'd like to especially welcome the teachers. Thank you so much for going. We're looking forward so much to hearing about your experiences there. I just want to explain to you that these sort of things don't happen overnight, and they're the culmination of many years of hard work and networking and building up what we wanted to do in the Holocaust Centre. And it started a long time ago, many years ago, when Vera went to an international conference for the International Task Force, and there met the representative of Yad Vashem, Rochelle Budd-Kaplan, who looked after this part of the world. She sent us our first representative for our first teachers' seminar, and that was 6 years ago. Was that about 5 or 6 years ago, wasn't it? And each time I went to Israel to visit family, I squeezed in a visit to Yad Vashem to tell them about what we were doing here, because no one at that side of the world can really imagine that we teach the Holocaust here so far away. And so we gradually built up the relationship with Yad Vashem until last year when I went, and I wasn't on a family visit there, I was on a business visit. I went to a UNESCO conference in Paris, and on my way back I went to Yad Vashem, and because I was very kindly sponsored by the National Commission for UNESCO, for the Holocaust Centre and for Urban Trust, I decided I had to give it all I had, and really we set up a lot of interviews and meetings there, and out of that came this wonderful project. And that wasn't the end of it, because I came back and it wasn't quite confirmed. And they'd also sponsored Stephen to go over there for a conference. And so he went there and he finished the deal. And he got the budget for it, and we were really very grateful. So I just wanted to give you an idea of how this came about. But I'm going to hand over now to Gail, because she's been doing a wonderful job. She accompanied the teachers over in Israel. And I'm going to hand over to Gail. Thank you.
Just the format for this part of the evening. Just a few words of introduction about Yad Vashem from me. And then there's a video, and the teachers, can you put up your hands? Because I don't want to introduce them by name just yet, because they're on the video and they haven't seen it, and so I think it's unfair. So we'll wait until after the video, and then I will introduce them, and each of them is going to speak to some particular aspect of the trip and the special interest to them. So can you just raise your hand if you've been to Yad Vashem? It's a lot of people. There you go. So you're in a room full of people who've been to Yad Vashem. But what I didn't realise in going to Yad Vashem was the volume of people who go through. There's between 900,000 and 1 million per annum just through the museum. And the other thing I didn't realise is the extent of the campus. I think when you go to the museum, you're not necessarily aware of the fact that there is an International School of Holocaust Studies, which is a full campus on the premises or in the precinct. And it is absolutely full to overflowing. Every day there are hundreds of students, whether they're international students or whether they're Israelis going through the army or whether they're high school students who go through the international school or the School of Holocaust Studies at Yad Vashem. This particular seminar obviously was the first for New Zealand. Yad Vashem runs 60 plus international seminars a year for teachers, non-Jewish teachers, who come from China, from India, from Asia, from all over the show. And this for them was the first New Zealand seminar. And we were 22. So there were 22 teachers who came from Auckland, Hamilton, Tauranga, Palmerston North, Wellington, Blenheim, Alexandra, Timaru, and Christchurch, all over the country. Hadn't met each other beforehand, came to Israel for a 16-day, very intensive seminar that involved both classroom days, which were 3 to 5 lectures a day, workshops, films, trips, involvement with Holocaust survivors who gave testimony and who we could engage with, and day trips outside of Jerusalem to the north and to the south. So I'm just going to leave it at that for now, and technically I have to go and turn on video. So maybe I can hand over that. You can turn that off.
Down the road.
Can we plug it into the speakers better? I still have to do the temporary.
Mike said to try to find myself on starting with that.
stone, and because we come from all over New Zealand, we have brought stones from all over New Zealand to show how much we appreciate the community.
It's great for us to be able to demonstrate to our students. We're also Christian, but we also still are learning every day. Can you hear, for me personally, there's no I'm speaking on behalf of everybody that it is a whole dynamic part to it. Especially those educators that come here, they describe the responsibility for the community they live in. And they do want to influence the values, the norms, and hopefully the behavior of youngsters in their respective countries. And Holocaust that serve this purpose very, very, very because you can learn not only how low can you manage to go, but also on how you manage to go.
For so long, I wanted to make a Holocaust survivor. And I've also really wanted to ask the question of, after your experiences, after the war, how did you feel? Did you have a desire for revenge? What was it like for you? How did these experiences leave you? And we had the opportunity to meet in small groups after hearing the stories of 4 Holocaust survivors. And we spoke in small groups to all 4, and what I left with was Frida's response to my question was, how did you feel? Did you have this desire for revenge after the Holocaust? And she turned to me and she said 4 words but 1 word: love, 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 love.
I looked at my Nazi, and I hardly recognized her. My Nazi looked so different, so strange. She looked as if she put a white mask on her face. I'm standing in front of the new Holocaust Museum. It's the centerpiece of the Yad Vashem campus. It consists of 11 galleries that tell the before, during, and aftermath of the Holocaust.
The historian teaches the past. The educator will ask the meaning. What is the meaning of the Holocaust to my students? That's why we teach the Holocaust as a human story. It happened at the core of civilization in the modern time. What does it mean to teach it as a human story with the meaning? We have to give in the face and an identity
children's lives. 1.5 million Jewish children who were murdered during the Holocaust. Inside, as you walk, there are thousands of lights flickering. It's like our night sky in the southern hemisphere. Each star representing a child's life.
Now, here we are in the Righteous Among Nations. This area commemorates the lives of non-Jews who helped to save Jewish people during the war when most of Europe was under Nazi occupation. These are all people who risked their lives because hiding Jews was a capital offence, and many of these people died because of what they did. This area here has particular significance for me and for other people in New Zealand, because here we have recorded the names of 2 people from the Netherlands who saved a little girl. This is Godfriedus and Johanna Harkins, and the little girl's name was Ellie. They hid her in their attic for 2 years or more, and risking their lives all the time. After the war, they immigrated to New Zealand and lived on the Kapiti Coast. In 2011, they were recognised as Righteous People Among Nations, and their name is recorded here. Now, in 2012, Ellie, who's now over 70 years old, came out to New Zealand and visited the family of the saviours.
I've been in some old places in Europe, but I've never been anywhere as old as this place. And being able to physically touch things that are thousands of years old, something that a lot of our students in New Zealand can't comprehend because they're thinking so young.
I love the trips. I love going to Masada. I love the tour around the old city. I love going to the DDC because, of course, going to a country and hearing about a particular event is not complete unless you know about the people of the country. And you can't know about the people unless you realise that they've got for 1,000 years of history that is actually written down and documented and that they can show it to you.
Being away with another group of history teachers is actually amazing. The conversations that we have in the bus, in the lobby, in the lift, in the Crusader bar, just about what's going on and how you can teach these things. And what it's really done for me is I've really enjoyed hearing about how everyone's using things, and it's sparked up a whole lot of ideas in my head.
But he wasn't really an ideologue. He wasn't interested in Nazi politics or anything. He was interested in being a teacher. And if being a teacher meant you had to be a member of the Nazi party, okay, whatever. I've always considered history to be a story. And sometimes it's a great story, sometimes it's a sad story, sometimes it's a love story. And what we've learned has got a lot of those elements, hasn't it? And I hope I'm going to be a better storyteller of what I've learned.
This is the first seminar for educators from New Zealand, our first Kiwi seminar here at the International School for Holocaust Studies in Yad Vashem. The seminar was organized and supported by the Holocaust Center of New Zealand, by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the State of Israel, and by the graciousness of the Nielsen Family Foundation. We hope that this will be the first of many more educational seminars to come from New Zealand. It's far away, but the educators that we have met here have shown their conviction, their determination to take what they have learned in this 16-day seminar back to New Zealand, back to their classrooms, back to the students.
I'm sorry about the issue with the sound. We did ask, didn't we, Michelle?
Surprise to us as well. Okay.
So maybe do you want us to take the to do it together. The thing that was really special for me is I had not met any of the teachers before I went. Sorry, I had not met any of the teachers before I went. And what stood out at Yad Vashem for the educators who dealt with them, who were engaged with them, was the calibre and quality of our New Zealand teachers. All of those who went were carefully selected. Carol was involved with the selection process, as were a number of others, and I'm not sure exactly college. And they were incredibly committed. They were put through their ropes. But what was really special, do I have to use this? What was really special was the fact that they, actually all of them, almost all of them, had been involved in Holocaust studies or had committed to introducing Holocaust studies to their curriculum anyway, and had been doing so for some time. So that what the Yad Vashem course did for them was it augmented what they already knew. I'm going to get each of them to introduce themselves. I'm sure they'll do a better job than me. But basically, of the 22, as I say, 5 were Wellingtonians. This is the first time we've been together, and the first time that we've had the opportunity to maybe reflect a little on what went on for us. Do you want to start?
Would you want me to do the whole thing or just introduce myself?
Well, if you would, maybe we can do your whole thing. We can just introduce us.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. For those who don't know me,
Try one more time. The microphone is just adjusted in.
For those who don't know me, my name is Judy Regan, and I'm slightly the odd one out because I'm not a secondary school teacher. I am an educator at the Holocaust Centre, and I work with the other educators to deal with the students who come in to visit, and we take the program for them. And I also do some voluntary work regularly at the centre as greet for the people who drop in while the centre is open to the public. So for me, the trip to Israel, of course, was invaluable for my role at the centre, but it also had a huge impact on me. It was my first time in Israel, and the Western Wall, walking around the old city in Jerusalem, visiting other places around the country, seeing the land, the promised land. I felt very strongly connected to my culture and heritage, so it very much enriched me from that point of view. So what I'm going to talk about is a little bit about the Holocaust survivors that we met, of which you would have seen some in the video. So as part of the program, we were privileged to have a number of survivors come to talk to us at Yad Vashem to tell their stories. And so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about some of what they told us in their testimonies. The first person we met was Hannah. She was born in Berlin, and the family moved to Holland when her father lost his government position when the government changed in 1933. So she described to us her life in Holland and how slowly during the Nazi occupation conditions deteriorated for them. And Hannah's family were neighbours of the Franks, of Anne Frank fame, and she and Anne Frank were close friends and schoolmates. So some of what Hannah told us about her life was interwoven with details about Anne, and it was interesting to hear firsthand a little bit more about this well-known girl and her life before the war. Back to Hannah. Her mother died in childbirth, and Hannah and her siblings were sent to an orphanage. And eventually all the children in the orphanage were actually taken to Bergen-Belsen. And she found Anne again at the camp on the other side of a fence, and she got to speak to her on a couple of occasions and managed to throw some food over the fence to her. And at that stage, Anne Frank was very unwell and in low spirits. And after that, Hannah never saw her again.
Hannah and her sister were liberated, and once their health had improved, they made their way to Israel 2 years of the war. Another session we had was a workshop with 4 of the survivors. So rather than sitting up the front and speaking to us from the front of the room, they sat amongst us. We sat in a circle, much like you are now, with them sitting among us, and each one related some short episodes about their history and their personal experiences. Then we broke off into small informal groups and were able to talk more intimately with them and ask them questions. And that was some of that you actually saw there on the DVD. One of these this session was Israel, who was born in France of Polish parents, and he was 3 years old when his father was taken to Auschwitz. And as his mother was working, not able to look after him, he was put into a children's home. And when Germany invaded southern France, his mother was sent away to a camp. However, she and her son did survive, and they continued to live in France, where Israel was trained as a doctor of philosophy, and he and his family made Aliyah in 1963. Frida, who was a very vibrant and youthful 91-year-old, came from Warsaw. She was the one that Emma was talking about on the DVD when she talked about asking her how she felt afterwards and whether she was bitter and angry. And she said, love, love, love. That was a very emotional moment for all of us, the way she described her feelings today. Pretty horrible story for her. She was taken from the ghetto to a death camp, and she told us about this remarkable escape she had, twice really. She was already in the ghetto, about to cane for them to be evacuated to another camp, put onto trucks and taken away. This was followed by a death march away from the front, and terrible conditions. They were eating snow and sleeping in ditches and so on. And once more she managed to survive. She got married in Bergen-Belsen, where she ended up, and she and her husband decided to move to Israel later after having a very belated honeymoon. Another one of the survivors was Tibi from Slovakia, who now lives on a kibbutz. And he is a very active and fit man. He keeps up a rigorous daily exercise program. He runs, he swims. And he also endured a death march over the mountains to Bergen-Belsen. He related that at liberation, Russian prisoners of war that were lying around, breaking their jaw out the gold fillings and gold teeth. And Tibi and his brother, his father was dying at that stage, they lay down on top of their father to try and hide him from these people. And when they saw the situation was terrible and hopeless, Tibi himself removed his father's gold fillings rather than having his father's body desecrated in that way. Yehudit lived with her mother in Italy, though she and her mother were very attached to each other. And in January 1944, when she was 5 years old, her mother and grandmother were ordered to pack up and go to the railway station. Her grandmother was taken away, and Yehudit was stopped from running to her mother, and the guard there gave her this little girl of only 5, the mother, or staying behind with a neighbour, a Christian woman who was there for some reason at the railway station, to be taken away and looked after by her. Imagine that, the choice of a 5-year-old. And you actually saw her, and you might not have picked up from the DVD what she said, but she said that she was able to read in her mother's eyes that she should go with the neighbour. She said, in her eyes I could see her telling me to choose life. So the neighbour took her away and eventually sent her off to a nunnery where she lived safely and attended school with other non-Jewish children. And finally, on our visit to the grave of Oscar Schindler, that you just saw, we met 2 of the people that he rescued, and you saw them there, Nachum and Genya. This is a nice story. Nachum and Genya met while they were both working at Schindler's factory, and they fell in love. And while they were there, Nachum fashioned a ring for Genia out of a piece of scrap metal as a sort of a token for being together. They were separated at the end of the war, but nothing managed to track Genia down married. And she still wears that ring. She was wearing it there when we talked to her. And these two delightful elderly people are just so obviously still in love. It was just a lovely story for us. So, these survivors, despite their increasing age, gladly speak to groups at Yad Vashem. Some of them come from quite some distance to talk regularly to the groups and the programs that they have there. They come from different countries originally. They've all had different experiences. But what was common to them all was what we could see, their outstanding courage and resilience. Much of their survival was down to luck, but there had to be the will to live, to carry on, despite the atrocities that were inflicted on them and their families. And when we listen to the stories, it takes the Shoah out of the pages of history books. Their testimonies turn the numbers, the statistics, the grainy pictures of emaciated people into real life and real people. Through these personal accounts, victims of the Holocaust are, as we heard just now, are rescued from the pile of bodies and become individuals with an identity and a face. So survivor testimonies are a powerful way of delivering the lessons of the Holocaust. Sadly, many of the survivors are no longer with us, but we're fortunate to have captured some of these stories and recorded them on DVD and in writing, and there are a lot of these around and available. So we're going to continue to invite the survivors within our community to talk to us and to talk to the school programs and to use the recorded testimonies as part of the integral part of the education program that the Holocaust Centre of New Zealand is going to offer and continue to offer. Thank you.
No, I don't behind the desk. It's being a teacher. So my name's Brad Evelyn, and I teach at St Catherine's College in Kilburnie, just up over in the hill. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we did when we weren't in the classroom. So all the fun stuff when we went around Israel and saw different things. I'll just quickly point out, it was nice hearing G about what some of the slide writers had said, because you're quite overwhelmed by hearing them speak again. So it was quite good hearing that again. Well, where to start? We got off the plane, and the first thing we do is we take a tour of Jerusalem, bus tour of Jerusalem, which lasted 4 or 5 hours. Yeah, it was quite intense. So we went around with our tour guide Nadav, who was great tour guide, very opinionated tour guide. Yeah, very politically opinionated. So we went around Jerusalem. We started by going up onto the Mount of Olives and looking down over this amazing view side of graves, Jewish graves, to the old city with the Dome of the Rock and different aspects of that. And there we got a very intense lecture about Jewish history, which turned into a very heated debate, which was still really interesting to hear it. Most of us just wanted to take pictures of this amazing view. So we spent a few hours, must have been about an hour at least, up on top of that hill. And then we went to other parts of Jerusalem to get different viewpoints of the old city. And the thing that strikes me when you get to Israel, maybe I've never been, is the old feeling of the city, and the fact that everything obviously has the Jerusalem stone on the facade, and even the most modern parts of the city look like they're thousands of years old. And that's just amazing, because then when you get to Tel Aviv, you don't see that. It's glass and concrete everywhere. So that was day one. Most of our lectures were during the day. Then at night we went to other parts of the city. So one night we went to the Israel Museum to get a good look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, and which turned into another very heated debate about Christian theology from a Jewish perspective and from a Christian perspective. But it was still very cool to see the Dead Sea Scrolls. You hear about them, but actually to see the Dead Sea Scrolls was very amazing. And then to see this amazing scale model. Is it a scale model? It was a scale model of Jerusalem as it would have been in year zero, basically, 2,000 years ago, with the temple and the city all there for you to see. It was quite amazing to see that. We also did under the Western Wall tunnels, so we went down into the tunnels to see what the city would have looked like at that time, or walk along the wall, which was quite amazing, and to see the amount of people there who are still praying. Even though the Western Wall is regarded as close as you can get, underneath the tunnels it's closer again, so there are people there praying, and there's a woman there who prays there a lot. How long did she pray there for?
I don't know.
A lot. It was a long time. It was all day. She's there all day, and she's just sitting there quietly praying. So that was really cool. And oh my God, we did so much. No, I'm going in chronological order. I don't think we did anything on Thursday night. Friday night we did Shabbat. We had the Shabbat meal. We went to the Great Synagogue in Jerusalem and we had a service there at the Great Synagogue. And then we went back to the hotel. Amazing Shabbat meal where Ephraim and Steffi, who you saw on there from the centre, from Yad Vashem, sort of introduced us to Jewish religion and Shabbat, which was quite amazing. And the thing that really struck me about going to service at synagogue is that no matter what denomination of Judaism you were, everyone knew what to do, which was certain. So you had Hasidics, you had Orthodox, you had seculars, liberal Jews. Everyone was there, and they all knew the process, which I don't think you really get in Christian churches, because everyone has their own churches. And then on Saturday, even though it was Shabbat, we had an amazing, intense, full-day tour of Jerusalem on foot. Where we went to different aspects of Jerusalem. So the first part was the Citadel Wall, so we went around the Citadel, on the ramparts, through the Armenian Quarter, and then we went to the Jewish Quarter, and we went to see Gail, who was staying there with her brothers, and we had afternoon tea there, and her place had this amazing view down of the Western Wall with the Dome of the Rock in the background. It was amazing. I don't think you'd ever have a view like that anywhere. It was quite amazing. And then we went to the Western Wall, so we kind of walked past the Western Wall. Wasn't as busy when we were there that time because everyone had been there that morning. And then we went into the Muslim Quarter, towards the Christian Quarter, to walk the Via Dolorosa and into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which was quite important for a lot of people on the group who were Catholic or work at Catholic schools like myself, to go to places which are quite important in Catholic religion or Christian religion.
Did you like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre?
Did I like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre? The status quo was interesting. Yeah, it was quite a status quo. It was very busy. And then some of us got caught behind us, and we couldn't get through because there were priests blocking it all off. And the Nadav was getting really angry because we were taking too long. So that was quite funny. And then on Monday we went to Tel Aviv. Now, to be honest, I don't like Tel Aviv compared to Jerusalem. I would compare Tel Aviv like Glasgow and Jerusalem like Edinburgh. So Jerusalem's got all the character, and Glasgow, don't like it. That's just my opinion. The beach was cool. The beach was amazing. We actually made a mission down to the Mediterranean to have a look at the Mediterranean, which was very cool. But we went to... No, we didn't go to that.
You didn't see the
No, we must not have done. But we went to the Independence Hall, so we went to Independence Hall to see where Ben Gurion proclaimed the State of Israel. I'm going to take these keys out because I keep playing with them. And we also went to the Palmark Museum to learn about the Palmark and what they did in contributing to Israel gaining its independence in 1948. And then we went to Jaffa, so we went down to Old Jaffa, that was a very nice part. I did enjoy Old Jaffa, which was very cool. And now we get to the really interesting parts. So one day we went to Masada. So you'll obviously know the story of Masada. That was a very amazing place actually to go there into the desert and driving along the Dead Sea and taking the cable car up to the top of Masada and getting this amazing view down into the valley despite the haze. It was very hazy, so you couldn't really see into Jordan. But you did get to see this amazing palace, and I think to see it in its heyday would have been incredible. To see it when Herod was there, and I think that would have been amazing. But it's quite incredible if you go to the other side, you can still see the ramp that the Romans built to break the siege of Masada. And then we went to the Dead Sea, and we swam in the Dead Sea. That was very cool, very surreal experience to actually float. And I don't think people really believe you when you say you float, but you do, you float. That's very cool. Well, I can't really say much more about the Dead Sea because that's all it is. And then the day after that, we went up to the north. So we went up to the Golan Heights. So we followed the border of Jordan to a kibbutz. Was it kibbutz Gisha? Yeah, kibbutz Gisha, which is right on the Jordan River. So we crossed the fence, the Israeli fence, into the no man's land between Jordan and Israel, and went down to the Jordan River. And it's quite amazing. There's a guard tower up there on the Jordan side, looking down on you. You could see him with his binoculars watching you. And we learned about the hydroelectric dam which was built just nearby, which it's in Jordanian territory now, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it's Jordanian territory. And how that hydroelectric dam came to be, and then how it was lost to Israel. And then we continued up to the Sea of Galilee, and we had lunch at the Sea of Galilee, which was quite nice. Again, very hazy, so you couldn't really see tides on the other side or anything. But then we went to the mountain, which looked 1967 during the Six-Day War, where the bunkers are all still there, and who on the Six-Day War he fought, but he in the Six-Day War and fighting against the Syrian forces there. And then we went to the chocolate on a kibbutz, where we got to make chocolate, which was very cool. So, sorry? No, it's a kibbutz chocolate factory, so it's actually a kibbutz. And the chocolate was very amazing. It was very nice. Especially the chocolate liqueur, which you could buy, which is amazing. My wife puts it in mousse, it's amazing. And then we returned to Jerusalem, and that was really we were doing this in between all our learning and stuff like that, so it was very intense. And then on top of that, a lot of us were seeing things independently, so a lot of us were going to the old city markets to shop. And then some of us were going up to Mount Herzl to look at the graves of the veterans' graves and to see the gravesite of Theodore Herzl, the creation of Zion, and the gravesite of Yitzhak Rabin, and people like that. So just being able to wander Jerusalem in our off time was very incredible. The light rail was amazing. It got you where you needed to go. That was, for me, despite everything that we learned, I enjoyed everything we learned. But for me, as I said in the video, actually being able to see and touch places so old and recorded for a history teacher, it's recorded, it's amazing. And to have over 2,000 years of history recorded and be able to actually see it and physically touch it was incredible. And then for some of us to actually get up onto Temple Mount as well and be able to walk around Temple Mount. Some of us actually got to do that. We had to go very early in the morning. before we went to Tel Aviv, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah, so being able to do that was also incredible as well, which wasn't part of the itinerary. Oh, I forgot one. We went to Bethlehem as well. So we did make it to Bethlehem, which was very cool from a Christian point of view to go to the birth site of Jesus. For a lot of us, it was quite incredible going from Jerusalem through the wall into Bethlehem. It was quite amazing, because in New Zealand you don't have that amount of security there. So yeah, that was it was a great trip, amazing trip. Do it again in a heartbeat. It's easier to stand up. Oh.
Does anyone need a 10-minute break to go to the bathroom or order a drink, or can we continue?
Hi, I've never actually talked from my microphone, so it's my first time. I'm going to talk quite briefly. I don't have my notes that are supposed to be still in Israel, so I've tried to do this without any sort of help. So forgive me if it's very brief. I'm going to talk really brief. My name's Melanie McGrath. I teach at Wellington High School. I teach senior geography and junior social studies, so this relates quite a lot to our junior program, and I'm trying to relate it a lot to my senior program as well. So you've heard a little bit about the course being 15 days. We were in lectures, so we had 3 to 5 lectures a day, and then we did all the extra stuff that Brad just talked about. So it was a very, very intensive time. So we looked at, we had lectures, so someone, the lecturer standing up and giving a lecture. We had discussion groups, we had videos, we had survivor testimonies that Judy talked about. So the way that the course was actually run was really thorough, and it was sort of something different every day. Covered a wide range of topics. Okay? So we looked at, we started with who are the Jews, we moved on to origins of anti-Semitism, we looked at Nazi ideology, the ghettoization, and the final solution and its implementation. We then looked at confronting Holocaust denial and the problems facing Israel today. So it went through, the scope of it was just huge. And I feel like we've just sort of scratched the surface almost. You go there with a lot of questions, and I feel like I've come back with even more questions. So I'm only just starting with this. There was also quite a lot of focus on things that I didn't expect. So we looked a lot about music and art and literature. And this sort of went beyond the historical stuff. So like we talked about before, it gave the victims a meaning, a face, a culture. That you wouldn't get with just facts and figures and place names, which was really special. I'm going to talk briefly about the pedagogy and relate it to what we learnt. So the pedagogy is the way we teach and how we should actually teach this content. And we started off right at the first the first lecture we did was all about how we should be teaching this stuff. And it was through stories, so you've heard it again and again. We need to be teaching the Holocaust through stories. Okay? It doesn't mean anything if we don't tell the stories of the people. And just connecting it to real life experiences whenever you can. It's going to make it more meaningful for the students, and it's going to make it more interesting for them, which is what we want to keep doing within our classrooms. We were also introduced to a number of educational tools and resources. So throughout the lectures, they would mention books, they would mention DVDs. We actually ended up with an entire unit that they gave us called Echoes and Reflections. As a teacher, this was amazing, and we couldn't believe that we were getting this for free, and we would take this home because when you go to professional developments like this in New Zealand, you don't get big sort of units to take back. So I can't wait for mine to arrive to go through it even more closely. We also looked at not just looking about the stories and connecting that to our teaching. We also touched on what's appropriate for different levels, and I think that's especially important for me because I do focus on the junior school, and these guys do go through and teach history through the senior school, so it is good to make sure that you're not covering the same content through the junior and the senior school. You're going to have different ways to teach the same sort of thing. I'm going to move on a little bit more to what I got out of this. Okay, I got a whole bunch of new ideas, and I think everyone else did. I'm just going to talk selfishly for a moment here. So concepts that I've never really thought about discussing are now in my brain as soon as I get back to New Zealand. So, for example, we learnt about the idea of degenerate art. So Jewish art was called degenerate art by the Nazis, and using that when teaching censorship, for example, that would be a really, really easy way to connect something. So I wouldn't have thought of connecting that with censorship before this. I would have thought about racism and the really obvious concepts, but this is more of a sort of a deeper understanding for students. This seminar has also opened up a whole lot of cross-curricular links that I didn't even think of beforehand. At Wellington High School we have quite an integrated curriculum. I work with a science teacher, an English teacher and a maths teacher quite closely, and we develop units that we basically cover a concept and we look at it from different areas. So for example, if I teach the Holocaust, I can rely on the English teacher that I work with to possibly look at poetry throughout the Holocaust, look at diary writing as a form of literature throughout the Holocaust, and now I have all of that to provide to her if she wants to use it, which would be amazing. It also opened up my mind thinking about relating this to the art program that we have at my school. So using the Holocaust to teach art, so to talk about influences within art and to talk about communicating meaning through art, that would be a really good way to do that as well. So it's not just in the history classroom, it is throughout a lot of other topics, other subjects in the school. I can't wait to explore that a little bit more. Again, on a more selfish note, this trip has been just absolutely amazing. I feel so lucky to have been a part of it. Being able to talk to survivors while they're still around was really something that I never ever thought I'd be able to do in my whole life. And just going to Israel, I've never really thought about it until it came up and I thought, I've got to do this. I can't stop talking about it. People are very sick of hearing about Israel from me. But I'm going to continue to keep talking about it, and I'm going to encourage people to go there and experience it because it's just such an amazing place. And the seminar itself was so well done. They had a perfect mix of pedagogy and teaching the Holocaust and then taking us out and seeing Israel. And everything that we did was made even better somehow. So our program we went, for example, we experienced the Shabbat at a synagogue, and we were talking to Ephraim, and he said, look, Kiwis, we're not going to take you to this one, we're going to take you to the great synagogue, so the biggest synagogue that we have in Jerusalem. And we thought, how could this get even better? And for every trip, it seemed like something was even better than was in the program. So we were just, astounded the whole time, and really, really impressed. It was also really, really great because there was 22 of us or 23 of us in the group, and it felt really, really personal. So you can actually go and talk to the lecturer afterwards and not feel like you're fighting a crowd. The lecturers would often stay behind and ask us questions about New Zealand. So it was really this sort of, I felt a real human connection with everyone that we met, which was incredible. And these people were just leaders in the field, people that I never would expect to meet. So I'm still buzzing from it really, and hearing this all again, I'm sort of... I know. That's my experiences. Thank you for listening. Good to keep going? Yeah. Do you want to go on stage? You just with your arms.
Hi, my name is Alice Ward. I teach history and I'm the assistant principal at Bishop Bayard College in Porirua. I'd like to talk a little bit tonight about how we can teach the Holocaust, teach about Jewish history to our kids through the curriculum. So kind of the possibilities for this. And this is very much a work in progress. I was just saying to the others that I feel a little bit of a fraud because I only feel like I know this much. And like Mel said, going over with so many questions, I've come back with so many more questions that I know that I'm going to spend the rest of my career trying to answer. And like many of the others, I box of books over there that just arrived back a couple of weeks ago, and they feel like new toys. I've got all these fantastic teaching resources and stories and things that I'm really excited about teaching with. And it's fantastic. I've been teaching some aspects of the Holocaust for the last 13 years that I have been teaching, and yet I still feel that I know nothing. So to have had this opportunity to go to Yad Vashem and to be a student for 2.5 weeks is such a huge privilege. So I have 2 teaching classes in my level 2 history, which is made up of 16, 17, 18-year-olds. I began the year by teaching about the Holocaust without any resources, just because I was so excited when I came back. And so I'll just share with you some of the challenges that has already thrown up, so you get an idea of the kind of things that we're dealing with in our classroom. So at Bishop Bayard College, we are a reasonably small Catholic school, very poor school in Porirua, co-ed. So what that means is I have a class of students who many of them struggle to find Europe on a map, let alone Germany or Poland or Israel. That's just getting harder immediately. And so one of the basic difficulties I have is geography, is just general knowledge. Now, my students have a vast amount of cultural knowledge of cultural capital that comes from their own cultures, but it's just not European. And so one of my initial challenges is how to make those cultural connections. And I found, having been to this seminar and having learned about different ways of teaching about the Holocaust, that I can approach that differently now. So like Mel said, learning about how art and literature and personal stories, even architecture, we've looked at synagogues and compared them to churches that they know, how I can make those connections with my students' own culture has been really, really helpful. Also, a connection that I'm fortunate to be able to make because I work in a faith-based school is to talk a lot about religion. And I can rely that, even though many of my students with their parents would definitely say are Catholic, have a very limited background knowledge and biblical knowledge as well, but I can rely on a little bit. And they are absolutely fascinated with learning about Judaism. They've really been doing that for the last couple of weeks and talking about different roles of men and women in different religions and what happens in a religious service and what some of the religious traditions are, what some of the beliefs are, what does that mean when you grow up. Those commonalities that I've learned so much more about having been in Israel are adding a huge amount to my teaching, because it means that students who have their own deep faith can make a connection with, this is another group of people who also have their deep faith, and that makes them quite a lot like me, even though I don't know where their countries are and I don't speak their language and so on. So being able to make that connection is really valuable. I'm also really aware that I can do that because I'm in a Catholic school, and that will be even more of a challenge to people who work in more secular schools. It's a big bridge for our Kiwi kids to understand the significance of faith. Another huge challenge in teaching in New Zealand to Kiwi kids is the whole question of who is a Jew. What does it mean to be Jewish? And for most of my students, and this applies at Bishop Bayard now, just as much as it did at Wellington East when I was there before my current job for the Central City girls. They're not aware of ever having met anyone who's Jewish. They don't know that there's a synagogue in Wellington. They don't know, when we talk about Jewish people, are we talking about a culture, an ethnicity, a bunch of people who speak a religion, and then we explain that actually no, none of those and all of those, and it's a very, very difficult concept. I mean, our students at Bishop Bayard Veronian now, we are more than 60% Pacifica and more than 20% Māori, and so for them culture is hugely significant. And so that's a connection that I can make, but to try and explain to someone who's never met anybody Jewish what that might mean now, let alone what that might have meant 60, 70 years ago in Europe, is a very difficult concept. So we've got several hard things to get through before we get to what happened in Europe in the 1940s. However, there are some really exciting opportunities in our curriculum as it stands now in senior history that make this a little more possible. So possibly when you studied history at school, you would have looked at, the prescription didn't change much, so you might have looked at the origins of World War II, 1919 to 1939, and you might have looked at apartheid in South Africa, and you might have looked at New Zealand's search for security, and you might have looked at black civil rights in America. There were a whole lot of options within the history prescription that didn't change for nigh on 50 years, and when they did change, it's kind of stayed the same for another 20 years. Until the last 2 years, when the curriculum has incredibly opened up for us. So this means that any of us in senior history can now teach whatever we like, whatever the kids will let us teach, for 5th, 6th, 7th form. And we focus on skills. So with my classes, one of the skills that I'm required to teach is understanding different historical perspectives. And so I'm using that for the Holocaust, because that's just perfect. So, and I gave my students their assignment today. They can pick any 2 people who were involved in any aspect of the Holocaust and any particular group or individuals that grabbed them and investigate their point of view. What did they think? Why did they think that? What did they do? And why did they take that action? And that's a real gift as a history teacher, being able to offer my students that breadth. And having learnt some of those perspectives just recently, it's really exciting to be able to offer them some stories from survivor testimonies or some stories from Israeli political point of view that they might like to investigate further. And the same applies to their research and their understanding of an event and their externals that they use in the exam. So this is perfect timing for this to be the first seminar with New Zealand educators, because prior to this year, last year, we would not have been able to use it as much as we are going to be able to use it now. So it's perfect timing for us to produce our own resources and to share some of the passion for teaching about the Holocaust specifically and about Jewish history in general. I think that'll do. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gordon Campbell, and I'm from Kapiti Coast. I teach at Kapiti College at Raumati. And I was going to tell you a little bit about the Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum, but I see quite a few of you have been there. So anyway, the thing that really fascinated me was the shape of the museum, the building itself. And it's a triangular shape, and it's sort of like this, with it's 180 metres long. It's a big, long, sort of triangular shaft or triangular prism, and the about 20 metres at each end, stick out of the end of the mountain, and the rest of the middle part of the building, the middle, say 150 metres or so, is actually in the mountain itself. And the top, maybe metre and a half or so, is glass, a glass sort of section that sticks out of the top of the mountain. So when you're walking through it, you're underground really. And the central triangular sort of corridor right down through the mountain, and then there are galleries that come off that you can go into, and you always return to the central sort of area, then you go into another gallery over there, and you go sort of a zigzag. You wind your way down through the museum. It's not a museum that you can walk in and just look at something and then just wander out again, or wander from this section over to there. You've got to follow a path that's designed that way. So once you go in there, you've got to go right through the whole thing before you get out the other end. It's very extensive. When you first go in, on the triangular wall at the end that you enter, there are moving pictures of Jewish life in the 1920s, 30s, and in Europe, ordinary life. And then you start going into where the Nazi party coming to power in Germany, and it's got sort of exhibitions about that. And then you progress on into the ghettos, and then you work your way through the whole Holocaust. You end up in the concentration camps, and you come out the other end. Some of the exhibits, well, they're all sort of quite, they're interesting. Some of them are disturbing, of course. The ghetto section, which I remember quite well, is that you walk into it and it's like being in a Warsaw street with the tram lines running down, and there's little bells ding-ding as the tram goes through and that sort of thing, and they've got a big projected film on the end wall which shows life in the ghetto, so you sort of get the impression that you're actually in it. And they've got little areas, little rooms that you go into and see exhibits of things that people had, things they owned, and all that sort of stuff in there. There was one exhibit I remember there. There were trunks that were filled up with Jewish history and events of the ghetto. They've been typed up on typewriters, on paper, and when the ghetto was being sort of disintegrating around people after the uprising, a group of Jews put the paper into these metal boxes and they buried them. And then they were found later, I can't remember if they happened to be found or if it was known where they were buried, but they came upon anyway. And one of these boxes is on display with some of the pages of Jewish experiences there. That was an interesting part. Another thing that struck me was a section that had children's artwork. And I looked up on the internet because there was one particular painting we were told about that really kind of fascinated me. Got the details here. It was drawn by a little fellow in the Theresienstadt ghetto called Peter Gins, who was a 14-year-old boy. And they had a number of his drawings up there. He had quite a talented little drawer, and he didn't survive the ghetto, but his pictures did, or many of his pictures did. And one of them was called Moon Landing. And this Moon Landing picture, I'm not sure if it was the original or if it was a copy, was taken into space by the Israeli astronaut Ilan Ramon. And he took that picture with him because it must have appealed to him in some way. And unfortunately, that spaceship was the one that disintegrated on re-entry. But that painting was, well, that picture was an interesting one for me. There were other parts of the museum. One other part that I remember well is the part that dealt with the concentration camps, and it had the uniforms and stuff like that. Some of the jackets, there was one jacket that was obviously a child. Now, I always believed that most of the children, or virtually all of the children, were gassed when they arrived, but it was this one had a striped uniform on with, it was obviously a child's uniform. When you go out, just before you leave the museum, there's this hall of names, and that was particularly inspiring, really. They're trying to gather the names of all 6 million victims of the Holocaust, and they've got around 4 million. And these names are all deposited in this big circular room, a huge room really. And there's a big dome on in the room. It's just one huge dome, and inside the dome are photos of quite a number of the victims. All around the walls and the outside there's folders, little boxes, filing boxes with details of the victims in them. And underneath this dome there's a huge hole that's been cut into the rock about maybe 15 metres deep, or it's pretty deep, and it's got water at the bottom. So when you look over down into it, you can see the reflection of the dome in the water below. And it's quite an amazing room, that one. When you come out of that, you leave the museum, you go out the end, and at the end of the museum it opens up. If you look up on the internet, you'll see photos of the opening up, and the triangle sort of breaks like that, and you get this view across on the hills of Jerusalem with all the houses and things like that. And the architect designed it like that so that when you come out of all this sort of horrible thing, you can see the new life that's been created there, or that the Jewish culture lives still, I suppose, that type of thing. Now, part of the complex is there's lots of areas there where people go to study Holocaust studies, and there's a huge film archive that we were shown, and they've got all sorts of films, probably every bit of film that's ever been taken of anything to do with the Holocaust, original footage and movies and everything. So we were shown that, and there was one other thing that you may be interested in. There's a railway wagon that was used to transport Jews to concentration camps. It was gifted to the Holocaust, the Yad Vashem Museum, by the Polish government. And they set it up on a stand outside on a railway line. They made a railway line projecting out into the across a valley, or across a sort of above a valley. And they put this wagon on the railway line just as an exhibit. And unfortunately, at the time when I was put there, they had a whole heap of complaints from people across the valley who could look across and see this railway wagon, and didn't like the idea of it, didn't like the look of it, and they decided to keep it here. And in the meantime, the trees have grown up around it, so they don't get any complaints anymore. But that was an interesting exhibit. They made it so people couldn't climb in and out of it. They didn't want people getting in and out of the wagon, and so it sort of stuck out on the end of this sort of a bit like a little mini viaduct thing there. So that was quite good. I think that's probably about enough from me. Oh, sorry.
Was there any questions?
My name is Vera Egermeyer. Most of you know me in this community. Should I have a microphone, or just speak very loudly? I wanted to say that it's not.
Yes, it is. Yes, speak.
My friend Chava Pressburger, who lives in Beersheba, which was mentioned earlier on, is the sister of Peter Gintz. And she will be very pleased to hear that you admired his painting. There's a whole cult around Peter Gintz. He's an iconic figure. The reason Ilan Ramon took that painting on that space mission was that it shows the moon. It shows the earth from the moon. So this is like a moon scene with those peaks, and then you see the map of the world below you. So this was a young boy on the verge of death, and he did die. His sister, who's a little bit older, and I, who went through that same camp, did not die. But that boy had a vision of what it would be like to be on the moon, down upon the earth. So that's why that picture was taken. I had a few other things to say that are maybe quite related. One was about a memorial that one of you described in Yad Vashem. It was the children's memorial with the broken columns. And you said that each light represented, each star or each light represented symbolically the life of one child. Well, we're working in the Holocaust Center right now on a similar project, and you've heard about it, the buttons. But once again there, we have each button representing the life of a child. And as it's been said, to give any of these memorials, any of these masses, any meaning, we have to draw the stories out. So it would be wonderful if you as teachers actually put a little bit of focus on children, because children will identify with children. I mean, your children, whether they're small, whether they're in their teens, they're the ones who are in these monuments. They're the ones who were dragged away. So maybe if you thought about focusing on children, it would be a very good way to bring the lessons home. Because everything the children, the adults suffered, the children went through as well. They were deprived of human rights, just as the adults were. So this is just a little impromptu commentary, but I was very pleased to hear reference to Peter Gens. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Could you share a little bit of how this all affected you?
How did this affect us?
How did it affect?
Well, I think personally the Holocaust Museum itself I found a little bit disturbing, and I didn't actually go back a second time. I'd had enough for one visit was enough at that time, although I might maybe go back again if I had the opportunity another time. I mean, I wouldn't be averse to going back, but I found it quite disturbing. I found it a bit upsetting, and seeing what had happened to like all these people, and people like my age now, or when my kids' age, that sort of thing. The terrible situation that people were put into. I didn't kind of personally like it. But in another way, it's kind of, I found it like it's happened so many times before, not with on such a grand scale, with such an organised or industrialised scale, but it's happened so many times in so many different places that you sort of, a little bit. It's a little depressing. I'll be honest.
You wouldn't want it any other way, would you?
No.
I mean, you wouldn't want the Holocaust presented as a live musical comedy.
No, that's right, yeah. I found the museum itself, that opening up out to looking out on the hills, I thought that was a great idea actually. It was, and the Hall of Names I liked in there. It was something about that place that was more of a memorial sort of to the people that had died, rather than the method and that sort of thing that they died by.
In terms of how it affected me, I cried a lot. Cried in the museum, cried when we heard survivors, cried when our lecturers told stories, cried when I read stuff. cried when I went to significant religious sites. So in terms of how it affected me, I think it will take me a few years to get a handle on that. It's only been a few weeks. And I think that some of the effects in me I'm beginning to appreciate now, but it's going to take me a long time to get my head around that. And I don't want to rush that process. It's quite hard to answer questions of people, particularly non-history teachers, who ask me what it was like, and I can say that it was overwhelming, and I can say that I've never learnt so much in a couple of weeks of my life, and I don't ever expect to again, but in terms of unpacking that, I think it's going to take me quite a while.
For me, two things affected me quite deeply. The first one was the Children's Memorial at Yad Vashem. I walked in and I walked out straight away because I just felt sick. It's dark, for number one. It's dark in there. It's quite depressing. And for me, I have an 8-month-old baby, and hearing the names circulating around and seeing that light kind of hit me that could have been my son if I was in that place. So we went back in there again, and I didn't stay in there very long. The other thing that affected me was, as Gordon said, about the opening up at the end of the museum, and you see this view of Jerusalem, and no matter what you hear about the process of what the Nazis did, and the unprecedented nature of what it was, because they were in uncharted waters, they'd never done it before, and their goal, they weren't successful. And when you walk out of that museum and you look out over Jerusalem, you basically go, they weren't successful, they didn't do it. And that's really, it's a nice feeling when you walk out of there, because you see that out over Jerusalem. And I think that's a credit to the architecture who made that, because I've never been in any museum that makes you feel that way when you come out of it at the end, after being in such a, I think Gordon's right, it's quite disturbing inside. And in the middle of the museum, it gets very claustrophobic. And you just want to get out, but you can't, because you have to follow the path that you take. So that's for me. Yeah.
Just hearing everyone recall their thoughts and feelings brings that all back. So it's chilling, and your heart sort of just sinks. And as Gordon was saying before about going in through the museum, we went through during the middle of the day, and we were given the opportunity to go back at night. And after crying my way through the museum, sort of just, it's harrowing, you go through. And I was fine until the Hall of Names, and that place your heart sinks to the floor into that pool of water. And I don't think it's not necessarily the faces you see hanging above you, it's the volumes of books that are around you, and what is not there. So the empty space of all the stories that have not been told yet. That really, really gets you. So I went through a second time, and I convinced myself that I would not be able to bring mess throughout it. And again, I cried in the exact same spots, just by the end. It was a bit different than that, because you didn't have the beautiful valley. You knew it was there, but it was that you were sort of left with this horrible ache in your heart. Another part that really moved me and that I will never forget is sitting sitting a couple of spaces beside Frida, and she started talking about her survival, and she had mentioned that she was saved from a gas chamber, and she just casually rolled up her sleeves, and I saw her number that had been tattooed on her arm, and up until that point, that is the first time I had seen that, and I didn't expect to see it. With all the things we learn, that's sort of at the back of my mind. And seeing that instantly, you can't do anything but cry. And it's sort of, those are the things that I'll never forget feeling, and even just bringing it up now, I'm sort of getting, it's quite the whole thing's quite intense. But it has to be that way. It has to, like the museum, it has to be chilling. It has to shock you. It has to make you question humanity. Otherwise, it's not doing its job. But it is amazing that the architecture allows you to have some sort of hope at the end of that, after seeing and hearing all those things.
Like the others, there were many, many moments that were very emotional. My first feeling of being overwhelmed was the first time that we went to the hotel, and I just stood there, and the whole thing just swept over me, the whole history, the Holocaust, everything, and going to the museum, well, everything really it was my people. That's what got to me. This is the story of my people. And that could have been me, could have been my parents. Frida was, we talked about, is about the same age as my late mother would have been. Also, my mother was also from Warsaw. And so I couldn't help thinking, well, that could have been my mother, and I might be here today. That sort of thing is what got to me. And many other occasions, I think we all got to the point where our emotions were just so running high that it didn't take much to tip us over the edge again into floods of tears. And I think that's not a bad thing. I think it's good that we were able to feel comfortable about expressing how we felt within our group. We all got very close and were able to support one another. So we felt okay about letting out our emotions. That was one of the wonderful things about this trip. The wonderful people that I travelled with.
Are there any other questions?
Some of us were wondering beforehand whether, particularly in regard to your perceptions of Israel or problems modern day Israel faces, whether you had any change in perception of Israel. I mean, I'm imagining that some people would have said to you, oh, why do you want to go there? Wouldn't you be scared?
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if you had any feeling or could give us any information along those sorts of lines.
There wasn't one moment where I felt unsafe there. I found, from New Zealand, I think, and we had this discussion a lot, I think, on the trip, that New Zealand media seems to be very pro-Palestinian. Very pro-Palestinian, and Israel's made out to seem like the bad guy in a lot of situations. But for me, and I can't speak for the others, but for me, being there, I can see why Israel feels it has to defend itself in that way when you are surrounded by a series of countries that literally want to wipe you off the face of the planet. So for me, I'm a lot more understanding of the situation over there. I find myself reading a lot more about what's going on over there in terms of the news. And if I hear something about Israel, I seem to go straight to the news to see what's going on, because they're talking about places which I've been to now, and I find that I have a bit more of a connection in that sense. I hope that's answered your question.
So for the months leading up to the trip, obviously there was a lot of coverage in the news, and I had a lot of people come up to me and question me about, are you still going? Do you want to still go? And I never for a moment thought, I don't want to go, but I was preparing myself for something that didn't exist. So when I got to Israel, I was expecting to feel very uptight and very vulnerable, and never once did I feel as if I wasn't safe. And I don't think it wasn't because we were part of a group and people were looking out for us. It was the way people were in Israel. Everyone was nice, and I could go shopping and not be worried. I don't know, and now looking back, I feel a bit silly because I didn't know. Obviously, I had nothing apart from what we see on the news. And as Brad started talking about this before, whenever Israel is in the news now, I find myself looking at our news in New Zealand and searching for alternate news, so searching for other perspectives to look at what other people are thinking. So, and sort of deciding on where our news sits within that, which I never had done before. I'm also, so a lot of people talk to me about what I thought of Israel now, and because they're only exposed to New Zealand news, I feel as if I have to give what I've seen and what I've heard on my trip. I have to really push that out there to get them to change the way they think. And that's great as a social studies teacher, to be able to push people and sort of say, why do you think that? Where did you get that idea from? And often they can't tell you, apart from it's in the news, which isn't a good enough excuse anymore.
I wonder if any of you have had a chance to think about what you have learned. How might it be different? How might it change? And how will people remember and commemorate and teach about the Holocaust in the future when there are no survivors still alive? I realise
that sounds like an application form.
The second trip.
I wrote about that in my application for this trip. I actually said in my application that once the survivors are gone, it's up to us as history teachers to continue teaching this. And if we don't teach it, then it'll be gone and it'll be lost and people will forget. And I said this, it didn't come up in the video, but I did mention it. It wasn't in the video. It's all right. That it will be a really sad situation if this event is forgotten and is not told. And I'm a supporter of not necessarily making it compulsory in school, but making sure that it is taught, and it is taught appropriately, and it is taught with dignity. That's what I said in my application form.
Can I just ask one question? As a the Holocaust survivor, and there are a couple of us here tonight, how did the second generation feature in your seminar? With the role of the second generation?
It didn't come up. Apart from the focus, the only time sort of generation talk came through was when we look at the future. So what did people do after the Holocaust, and why is it so important that Israel exists now? That was the only, but it was still quite significant because it's almost this is, I don't want to say, I'm trying to find the words. It's not the revenge, but this is the result of what's happened, is that people are now, they're breeding more to bring it back, to continue on. That was the focus, I think.
And the need to capture what we can of actual testimonies, get it down on film and written testimonies so that they're there, they're recorded before it's too late.
So in 10 years' time, in Israel, probably there'll be very few survivors that will be able to speak at this Yad Vashem course. So how are they planning for that? And do you know how they're planning for that at all? I'm asking this question because this is what the problem we have here as the Holocaust Centre of New Zealand, especially in Wellington at the moment.
And all around the world.
And all around the world. It's a eventuality that we have to prepare for.
Ephraim and Steffi, who were teachers mostly, they do a lot of work with survivors, and they work with them in terms of how to tell their story, so that they're able to tell their story in lots of different ways to lots of different groups. So if they've got a bunch of 13-year-olds, they would tell that in a particular way. There's just a bunch of history teachers, they tell it in a different way, and they can tell it in 5 minutes 2 minutes. So Brian's a very strict taskmaster. Was in the army, so he keeps reminding me. And they can tell it in 2 hours. So they're doing a lot of work with survivors on actually how the story should be told, and they are recording them. So each of these survivors is banked in the visual archive.
Their full story is banked in the digital archive.
And they also said that when they are working with survivors, that the stories are being told for the first time now because they couldn't tell them to their children. And so while, yes, a lot, as the survivors die, a lot of those stories will be lost. A lot of those stories are still only being told for the first time. So it's not that the storytelling is kind of stopping now. In a way, it's kind of seems to be intensifying at the moment. It was a huge privilege with Dane Malcolm and Genya, who were survivors from Schindler's Factory. They travelled for 2 hours to come and talk to us and spend the afternoon with us, and then 2 hours home again. And it was pretty overwhelming for us as a group, the amount of time and energy that the survivors were putting into talking to us. And I think it was Tibi, at least, the survivors who said that Yad Vashem is like a second home, and that they visit as much as they can, and it's a huge thing, huge privilege for them to tell the story, and obviously a huge privilege for us to hear it. But that there is that kind of sense of urgency that they know that those stories will be lost. But it was great to hear that they are really being treasured and sought out actively.
Your story is fantastic, and I'm sure the passion that you've showed us here will pass on to the children that you're teaching. There's 22 of you, if I'm not mistaken, and there's an awful lot of history teacher in New Zealand. And in many schools it is not taught because it is put in the either too hard basket or the too political basket. So how are you, the 22 of you, going to spread your belief among the other teachers?
Why are you looking at me?
Part of the program, the continuing program, and I guess.
Gail.
I guess to say that we called this session Echoes and Reflections on the basis of the material that is available from or was given to us from Yad Vashem. And our hope is that through the teachers there will be echoes and reflections. We can't reach every individual in New Zealand, but certainly the 22 teachers. Part of the reason that they were chosen was because of the commitments that they came forward with in their applications to implement this study through the curriculum. On top of that, we've already had a conversation about where we can go next, and with teachers' seminars that will be carried out in Wellington and Christchurch. The hope is that they will be run at each centre that will attract both those who've been through but also others coming in. A couple of the teachers have already put up their hand to write articles for the History Teachers Association, for their journal. There's no conference this year, but there is a SOCCON conference, which is a social sciences conference in July, and the intention is that part of the group will speak to the 350 to 400 teachers who will be there. So there's a kind of a series of activities that we're hoping will come into play. And the thing that I found so impressive to date is you just have to ask, and as a result of this experience, these people will come forward. So they'll find ways, I think, for themselves. There have been articles in the paper and a number of, I think 5 or 6 around New Zealand to date, talking that the teachers themselves have come forward, put themselves out there, talked about their experience and what it meant to them. So the hope is that it will come through in a variety of ways.
Is there a plan to send some more teachers?
Well, it requires funding, and it was a huge task to get the funding together for these particular teachers, each of whom contributed $1,500 themselves towards going. But it was extremely successful, and the fact that the teachers were recognised. Yad Vashem deals with a lot of teachers, as being so open, so being prepared to engage, being committed. None of them missed any class. And they started early and they finished late. So it was huge. One would hope that if there are the opportunities and there are sponsors out there, there will be those who will be pushing to get teachers from New Zealand.
I'll go again.
Yes, and Eva, that's right, Eva Levy, a survivor who is trained by Yad Vashem, is coming out to New Zealand on the 9th and 10th. She'll be in Wellington
Of April.
And already Gordon is involved in that visit up on the Kapiti Coast, and it's been
there is an evening session for everybody.
I should pass you over.
Actually, there are several sessions. Her first session will be at Kapiti College, and then this week we'll go out a newsletter to Wellington schools, advertising an open afternoon, information afternoon, to visit the Holocaust Centre and find out what we do, and the opportunity of hearing Eva Lovey speak. So that's for the 9th of April, and then on the 10th of April at 4 o'clock. And then on the 10th of April, she'll be speaking at Victoria University in the Hunter Council Chamber at 10:30. So be there for 10:15 for 10:30 start. And then on the evening at the Wellington Jewish Community Centre, she'll be speaking in the Mars Ward at 7 p.m. and that will be open to the community and interfaith and general public. So please keep those dates in mind. So it will be a great opportunity to hear a Holocaust survivor, and we'd encourage teachers to bring their students, if possible, to the session at Victoria University. Would probably be the most appropriate. So I'll leave it up to you guys.
Yeah. I just wondered, is there a resource pack that's going to be prepared to support teachers?
That's part of the aim. It's amongst, and that's one of the things that we hope will come together with the teachers. In other words, we're not preparing it for the teachers, we're preparing it with the teachers because they're the ones who've got the expertise in the classroom.
There is quite a lot of resources that have been prepared internationally for that, but then there's quite a lot of resources in the Holocaust Centre here about Holocaust survivors who've come to New Zealand and made it their home, and in some ways something in the middle where you can use the knowledge of international knowledge of how to teach the Holocaust, but also make it relevant to New Zealand, to people who come here who have made it their home and their children and their grandchildren live here. I think that might be something really key.
Sorry?
Is that requirements of the curriculum these days?
Significance to New Zealanders. Yeah, it's part of it. It's part of what we have to do now, for history especially. But we've always got to relate things back to New Zealand either through something that's what connects to us in some way, whether it involved New Zealanders, affected New Zealanders, or influenced New Zealand in some way.
But some of those stories have not actually been. There was someone just recently last week spoke to this organisation talking about her mother's life. Well, that hasn't actually been put together and presented. So there's quite a lot of opportunity for history teachers, people with that knowledge, to put it together and present it in the New Zealand context.
A number of Holocaust survivor stories are on our website. There's a link to our website, a site called World Website there, and you get quite a large number of New Zealand testimonies.
Yeah, and then someone on the trip, Cherie Trotter, had created a web. Is it a website?
Yes.
Yeah, Shadows of the Shoah.
If you go to our Holocaust Center website, there's a link to the Shadows of the Shoah, which does something different from what the World Upside Down does. And of course there are a number of survivor stories on the main Holocaust website too, which we are about to create. One of the textbooks, you were talking about having teaching together with the English teacher in math and science in the junior school, and how your curriculum is now focused on skills. Well, one of the skills that social studies students need to do is relate to math, and they need to graph, and they need to learn how to calculate percentages. And I've seen in one of the textbooks a horrible exercise about calculating the percentages of Jews that were killed and graphing it.
That's the really tricky part with our system that we have at Wellington High, is integrating maths without taking away from or making it cheap and making it like that.
I saw the students sitting down and calculating. It was like, how many Jews did you get killed?
So that's, yeah. So I'd stay away from that as far as I can.
I think everyone should stay away from that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I'm yet to, yeah.
This was, I'm sure that the teacher who's the person who, it wasn't a worksheet that the teacher had, it was a textbook.
Yeah. So that should never.
Yeah, that's because basically what that's doing is it's taking the Holocaust out of context. And
so you have to be very careful when you're integrating skills. Art, language is fantastic.
well, if you're going to be teaching, say in social studies, and we do graphing and social studies, if you're going to teach that sort of aspect of it, you would teach the context beforehand, so that you actually give the students an understanding of what happened, why it happened, and who they were, exactly, before you start looking at numbers. Like the first thing that you do when you get into classroom is you don't go 6 million. You don't automatically do that. You've got to look at who were the Jews. Why were they targeted? Why did the Nazis want to attack them? And then, as you move through that, then you can get to the facts and figures, which I don't focus much on personally anyway when I teach. But
I think that I haven't really used a textbook in teaching in the last 10 years, and that is a real strength of the curriculum now, is that we are not text bound, and we can use our skills as teachers and as kind of social science experts to teach those skills, rather than be tied to how somebody stuffed up in a textbook and a publisher who made a mistake. So, I mean, that's heartening. And also the fact that, certainly in the schools I've been in, we can't afford textbooks anyway. So, and I do really believe that you can trust the history teaching community. Teachers want to teach about the Holocaust, and certainly in the departments that I've led in the schools that I've taught in, there hasn't been any resistance on the behalf of teachers from teaching it. It's more the concern that we might not do it well.
Yeah.
And we might not do justice to it. And that's something that I've struggled with. I mean, it's a huge, huge thing, and you don't want to stuff it up because it's too important. And kids want to know.
Definitely.
The kids, in order to teach it well, you have to make sure that the kids want to know the right things. And that they get to know the people who are part of the story. Yeah. So I think that that the seminar was a fantastic chance for us to be part of that history teaching community and to have those history teaching conversations and social science teaching conversations more than we ever get the opportunity to. And I know that Gail says that we were specially select, but I don't really think we were because we were such a diverse range with a huge range of expertise and so on. And I know that there are lots of other really committed teachers out there like us. We're just particularly privileged to get to go. So I think that you can trust the teaching.
Yeah, I think you'll find that's
going on out there.
I've never seen a Holocaust textbook.
No.
I've never seen a book, a history textbook for schools dedicated to the Holocaust. Because, as you mentioned before, it is a subject that people don't really feel that book-wise to touch. Because how can you put that in a textbook? When you look at a book that I bought by Yehuda Bauer, which is about that thick, which is a good. It's an easy read. But if you had that book as a textbook, it would never get read by students. When you look at all textbooks, they're thin. You can't put the Holocaust in a thin book. It just wouldn't work.
Thank you very much. Everyone, please give them a round of applause for sharing your experiences with us tonight. And I just have one or two reflections, if I may. The trepidation or the feeling that you're feeling about not knowing enough and how can you go out and teach there. Well, I can speak for many of us Jews that whenever people are having a conversation about Israel, we're also afraid, what can we say to demonstrate that Israel is not completely out of context or what the actions are doing, and we're so afraid to speak because we also don't know all the facts. Same about the Holocaust as well. We can say family stories, but we don't know all the facts. So whatever you're feeling, we feel it too. And the important thing is just to join in the conversation and contribute your experiences. And thank you so much for your enthusiasm, because I'm sure that it's going to spread to all your students, as you said before. And as a Jewish girl, I went to Sacred Heart College, Catholic girls' school, my sisters as well. And it was a very strange experience for me to be sitting in the class and the religious studies teacher to be talking about Jews in the past tense, and the Christians were the new Jews. So it is really important what you spoke about, teaching, first of all, who are the Jews before you can teach about the Holocaust. And I actually work at TPK, Ministry of Body Development, so I know that whakapapa is such an important concept in New Zealand and same in Judaism, so that's really something that you can go by and get kids interested in that as well, and show how that's important in Jewish culture as well. Unfortunately, I don't have a thank you card for all of you, but we have one for Gail. Made by Betty Watkins, and I would also just like to advertise that on Wednesdays we've got our children's education program, Ora Wellington, at 80 Webb Street. Classes are currently taught by Rabbi Mizrahi and Gila Cohen and Joe Allen and some friends. And also on Thursday we have our second Ledor Vador adult education series, which is during the day. Kia Ora Torah is at night time, but we also have a day program which is running every 2 weeks. Michael Pitt put a lot of effort into making that program, so please come and spread the word. And we're going to have Rick Sahar talking about old Jews telling jokes. Or is it telling old Jewish jokes? I don't quite know the title. Bring a joke or two. So you can see that even though the small Wellington Jewish community's got a lot of stuff going on, and please keep in touch. Thank you very much, and thank you, Gail, and thank you, Eva.